that we are all made out of collections of cells. Who knew this already? Awesome, quite a few people. So everyone's done a little bit of biology before. We're all made out of collections of cells. Okay. Who can, and remember, we're putting up our hands, who can name some of the cells in our own bodies? I'm going to go to the back over here.
Red blood cells, white blood cells, and brain cells.
Awesome. Awesome, that's enough, that's enough. So we had red blood cells. What do red blood cells do?
They like blood, oxygen.
They do, they transport oxygen. So let's go right here.
Whatever it's called, but I think it's pallets.
Pallets? Are these for healing scabs? This kind of thing?
Yes.
Not too sure. Yeah, I think there are these pallet cells that actually go through all of our blood streams. And whenever we get a small cut, they'll come and they'll start scabbing up the cut. So I think you're totally right. There are these things called pallet cells.
And it's called myofibril.
Oh, myofibrin. What are you talking about?
Myofibril.
So let's go over here. Another cell.
Stem cells.
Stem cells, yes, cool. Stem cells are called totipotent cells. And totipotency means that they can transform into any other cells. So very, very, very cool cell that we use in research a lot. What about right here? Photoreceptors. Where are the photoreceptors? Yes. The photoreceptors are in the eye. That's completely correct. And why are the photoreceptors in the eye?
So then they can process the eyes, make the image in your brain.
That's totally right. So there's some light all around us right now. Right now it's coming from the sun outside, but it's also coming from all of the lights in this room. And that light is coming out of this light here, bouncing off all of you and coming into my eye, and my eye has to process that light. So it needs these cells that can process light, and these are the kind of photoreceptors that you're talking about. Yes?
Skin cells?
Skin cells, yes. What are skin cells for? What's the point of a skin cell?
To protect the inside.
Yeah, that's right. It protects us, right? It's all over us. So the skin is an organ, just like your stomach and your brain, and it's all over us. It grows just as we grow. It's very dynamic. And who knows the average life of a skin cell? Anyone? Yes?
4 months.
Oh, even shorter.
No, that's blood cell.
Even shorter for a skin cell. About 1 month, your skin will almost rejuvenate itself in about 1 month. So every month or so, you're rejuvenating all your skin on your body. Pretty crazy. So that's awesome. Everyone talked about a lot of different cells that I hadn't thought about. So everyone already knows biology quite well. That's so great. So as I was saying here in this slide, cells come in a range of shapes and sizes, and it's all kind of based on the functionality. So who can guess what these first cells are here? We actually said it before. They kind of look weird, right? These are actually the photoreceptors in the eye. So these are the eye cells. There's two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Does anyone know about those? Yes, down here? What's the difference between a rod and a cone?
A cone is color and a rod is like black color and stuff.
That's right. That's actually right. So a rod is for just how bright the light is. So it gives you your night vision, and a cone is kind of the different colors in your eye. So these two types of cells in your eye, they'll be absorbing different types of color and the amplitude of the light in different ways. And then have to report back to the brain. Oh, what did I just see? So what about these next cells? Anyone new? Anyone different? Down the back. What was that, sorry? Muscles. So these are muscle cells. Very elongated. Look how long they are. And this is actually the cell nucleus in each one of these cells. So this has all the information, your entire body in this cell, or in this nucleus. And then these muscle cells are very elongated and quite elastic. So they're kind of elastic, allowing your whole body to move around like this. They actually can sheath over each other with these little kind of runners that run up and down the muscle cells. Very cool. What about this one? This is the one I had on the cover picture. Someone who hasn't, yes? Not a T cell, no. Who else? Who else? Let's go to the front.
Neuron.
That's a neuron. That's the cell in our brain. And look at this neuron. It's really big. This is kind of where the whole cell body is. And then it has all these kind of dendritic structures. So like tree structures going all over the cell. And these are linking it to all the other neurons in your brain, which make your brain so amazing. It's linked to all these other cells, so many linkages. And what about the last one here? Yes. Blood cells, that's right. And they have to have this particular shape. You can see that these blood cells don't actually have a nucleus. There's no information in them with all of your DNA in there.
Yeah, because I know why.
Oh, you want to tell me?
Because the nucleus is too big when it's in the blood cell. Because when it goes down the heart, the nucleus needs to come out.
Oh, that's an excellent hypothesis. I actually don't know why, but I know why they're shaped like this, and they have to carry oxygen around in these dimples as they're going around in your blood. And some people have diseases that make their blood cells kind of different looking, and then the oxygen doesn't fit in there properly. And then they become anemic, so they don't get oxygen to their system as well. So nailed every single one of these cells. Wow, amazing, everyone. Very good. So how large is a cell? Yes?
The size of air.
The size of air. So is air this big? How big is air? Is air this big?
Oh, God.
Okay.
Are you talking about an air atom?
No. Oh, are you talking about an atom? An atom of air, like O2 or something like that? Air molecule?
Yeah.
Am I talking about that, or who's talking about this? So yeah, what do we mean when the size of air? Air is like a compressible gas, so you can actually squeeze it into smaller and larger sizes. Pretty small. Okay. So everyone has a ruler. Well, most people have a ruler on their desk. Yeah? Let's take our rulers. Hold them up like this. Now we're going to divide this ruler. Yeah? Perfect. I see lots of rulers. Very good. How large is this ruler?
A meter?
1 meter. This is 1 meter. Okay? Now let's divide this ruler into 10. How large is that going to be? Yes? It's going to be 1/10 of a meter, which is 10 centimeters. Yes, that's right. Now, I'm going to divide the ruler into 10 again. How large is this now?
1 centimeter.
1 centimeter. Very, very good. Now, I'm going to divide the ruler again by 10.
1 millimeter.
1 millimeter.
And then 1 nanometer.
Not quite a nanometer.
Oh, God.
And then I'm going to divide it into 10 2 more times. And that will give me about the average size of a cell. So you can see on this ruler, I have, at least on my ruler, up to 1 millimeter. I have these tiny little 1 millimeter divots. Yeah? So dividing my 1 centimeter by 10. So you have to divide that 1 millimeter again and again by 10. And that will give you about this number here. So that's about how big a blood cell is that's going in your body right now. So because these cells are so small and we're made out of cells, how many should there be in our body? A lot? Not many? Just a couple? Yes?
Quite a few thousand.
Quite a few thousand, million. You're totally right. So in our body, there's about 30 trillion cells.
Actually 37 trillion.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
It may differ from you. Maybe I've got a little bit less than you, because you're much smarter than me. So maybe you just have extra cells for your smartness.
1 trillion.
So roughly 30 trillion, okay? And I also wanted to point out, before I got to this number, that some cells are very, very large. In fact, there's a neuron, so a kind of a nerve cell in the giraffe that goes all the way up its neck, just a single cell, and then it goes all the way back down. So that cell, that one cell, is about 5 meters large. So even though I said the average blood cell is very, very tiny, we have to divide our meter ruler by 10 5 times. There are cells that are very, very large. And in fact, you probably have eaten a very large cell before, a single cell. Who eats eggs? Yep, that's a single cell. That's a big cell. That's right. So cells are everywhere. But it's not just us. I've talked a lot about humans and human cells, all the cells that you and I have. Okay? 37 trillion, my friend down the front.
Yeah.
It's not just us. It's all living things are made out of large collections or small collections of cells.
Gorillas would have really 70 trillion, I think.
70 trillion for gorillas. Wow. Okay. So, on that point, who can guess what this is? Maybe someone who hasn't actually answered before. Yes. The skin of a snake was the answer to what this is. Not quite. I'm going to give you a hint. This isn't actually from an animal. Yes, down the back. Oh. It is definitely a type of plant cell. It's actually a collection of plant cells. Each one of these little tiny things is a plant cell. So each one of these little kind of, I don't know what you call them, containers is a plant cell. Okay? So what this is if you go outside and you take a leaf and you take a cross section across the leaf like that, and then you look down the leaf under a microscope, this is what you'll find. So you have to use a bit of chemistry so you can stain particular parts of the cells so we can see these beautiful cells in here, these cell walls that surround the plant cells and all these amazing structures. So these things that you're seeing right here, these things, these are kind of the ribs on the plant, or ribs on the leaf. So this is the primary rib on the leaf, the one that goes right down the center, and it transports all the water around the leaf. So it has to be big cells. Like a big plumbing system. So the water travels up and down these big cells. Yeah. These little tiny cells all around it, they bring all the nutrients up from the roots and put them into the leaf. So this is like where all the sap is found. There's other things as well. There's this waxy layer on top to make the leaf waterproof, because if any water gets into the plant cell that it doesn't want, it can get bacterial, become infected, just like you and I get infected from bacteria as well. And then it has these little cells down here for breathing in and out. These little tiny things that open and shut. So just like you and I, plants have cells. Here you can see actually one of these little breathing cells. They're called guard cells. And these will open and close depending on the temperature around outside. So this is how a plant breathes, just like you and I. And here is another kind of rib down the plant leaf. So these are the big water carrying cells around here. And who knows what these green things are? I was going to show you some today, but my microscope wouldn't work. Who knows what these green things are? Down here. Oh, xylem. I love that word. No, these water cells are actually the xylem. And the sap cells are called phloem. So who knows? Yes. Chloroplasts. Beautiful. Do you know what chloroplasts are for? They're very green, and this green is, this is the greenness that we see in all the plants outside right now. They're green because of the chloroplasts. Yes.
Like they give the plant like color.
They give the plant color, but they also are responsible for energy production. They take the light that's coming down from the sun and they somehow convert it into energy. Okay. So plants have cells just like us. So all cells, my cells, the plant cells, all the other animals, all the other plants, all the other living things in the world all share something. They all share something in common. What might that be? Yes?
Cells.
Cells. All the cells are cells. That is definitely one commonality with all cells. I agree. Right here.
DNA?
Oh, yes, they do have DNA. That's an actually excellent point. I hadn't thought of that. But of course, they all have DNA in there, these kind of instructions that kind of encodes the entire plant. What makes a plant is its DNA. What makes me a human is my DNA and how it's expressed. So yes.
If you kick out the
Oh,
red blood cells?
if you kick out the red blood cells? Possibly. Possibly. What I was thinking about, which is kind of weird, is that they respire.
What do you mean?
What do I mean by that? Look at that. I anticipated your question. They take in energy and they breathe. So this is what I mean by respire. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, respiration. They're taking in energy. In our case, it can be from food, and they breathe. They breathe in and out. They take in oxygen. So how are we doing for time? Not too bad. Let's remind ourselves how it works for us. So where do we get our energy from? Well, we get them from these organic compounds. This is a very fancy way of saying food. We get them from food. Hopefully you all have a nice balanced diet with carbohydrates, some proteins and some fats. Yeah. And then we also breathe. How do we breathe? Who can show me? Let's all breathe. Ah, that feels good. Feels good breathing. I wouldn't recommend not breathing, in fact. So we take in air through our mouth, through our nose, it comes down in our lungs. The air is somehow filtered out, we just get the oxygen, and this goes into our blood, goes through all the cells in our body. And when we breathe out, we actually breathe out some carbon dioxide and some water. It's like the vapor on our breath. So when you go up to a window, you fog it up, you're fogging it up with water that's coming out of your lungs. Yes?
The trees breathe in, the trees give out the oxygen for humans, and the plants breathe in the...
That's right. That's absolutely right. So our questioner here, our little young star down here, said that trees breathe out oxygen and breathe in CO2. So it's kind of correct, but also kind of wrong. Why? Well, because they actually also do this. They also respire. They actually breathe in air, oxygen, and they breathe out CO2. They do that at night. But during the day, they are using their chloroplasts to take the light, and in taking the light and turning it into energy, they produce oxygen. And they produce more oxygen than CO2 at night. So the net effect is that plants will produce oxygen and put it back to our atmosphere. But they will also respire like this. They will produce some CO2, just a small amount. More questions?
They do make glucose with the sun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a very basic sugar.
It is. It's the basic building blocks of probably all carbohydrates. So our questioner said, or our young star said, that that plants turn light into glucose, and that is true. They are constructing sugars, and we in the dietary world will call these sugars carbohydrates. So carbohydrates really have a lot of energy packed into them because sugar has a lot of hydrogen atoms surrounding the kind of sugar, and these hydrogen atoms are kind of the basic building block of energy. So there we have it. The air that we breathe and the food that we eat fuels every cell in our body. So we can look at these respiration processes, us eating things, us breathing on very large scales, of the scale of our whole body, but individual cells are doing it as well. Okay? So what is this energy from food that I keep talking about? Who's seen this before? What's this? Yes, yes. That's a Big Mac. That is indeed a Big Mac. And inside this Big Mac is a lot of energy, 2,300 kilojoules. What's the prefix kilo? Yes, I heard it somewhere murmured in the audience. Kilo is 1,000, so 2,300,000 joules, okay? And when you do a little bit of physics, you do just a tiny bit of physics, this is enough energy to take an apple and move it to Brisbane and back to Canberra. It's a lot of energy. That's a lot of energy. So, how do we deal with all this energy? We eat the burger and we don't explode suddenly like a nuclear explosion, do we? There's so much energy. No, that doesn't happen, does it?
Yeah.
Who's eaten a burger before? Yes? Who's exploded before? Oh, we've had a couple explosions. Well, that's fine.
Maybe explosions from soda.
That's fine. So clearly the body is doing something interesting with this energy. It's not releasing it all at once, is it? It's kind of slowly releasing it somehow. That's a lot of energy, as we just talked about. Too much energy to use all at once, so our body has to extract the energy in increments and release it slowly, so we can use it in our everyday lives and we don't explode like a bomb. How do we kind of do this? Well, this is kind of the overview. We take our hamburger, we digest it in our stomachs and in our intestines. So the stomachs will kind of, we'll put this burger in a very acidic environment and they kind of pull it apart using acid. And then in our intestines, it'll put it in a very alkaline environment and kind of pull it apart using alkaline processes. So our body's very good at kind of throwing all kinds of different extreme environments at this burger. Also, of course, our mouth and our teeth really munch it up a lot. So it's good to chew your food because this means that you'll get more nutrients out of it. Okay, it's going to break it down into proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So we digest it, we break it down, and then we actually mix it somehow, which we'll talk about, with the oxygen that we breathe. And after all of that mixing, what we get is a little chemical, which is like a battery. It's like this little battery in your cell called, who can say this word?
Adenosine
Triphosphate. Close. Yep. Adenosine triphosphate. Very close. I think you pretty much nailed it. And this is kind of a chemical battery that we can create in our cells everywhere. We can just create these little chemical molecules, and then we can use it at any time. It's just kind of in our cells, just floating around, and we can use it to power every process in our body. So we can store the energy from our Big Mac and use it later in our body. Question at the back.
Sorry.
That's okay. Someone online said, it's cool. And I agree. It is very cool. The body doing these very weird things. And not exploding. That's the key point here. We don't explode. So to really understand what's happening, we have to zoom in on a cell. We have to understand what's happening in one cell. And I can guarantee you that it's kind of happening in all of the other cells, except for some weird cells like the red blood cells. So we talked about kind of nucleuses before. So remember, this is the kind of data storage place in the cell. This contains all of your DNA, all the instructions for essentially everything that your cell will do. All the things that, you know, kind of define us in these kind of, in these instructions. Okay, but there's some other important places. There's some other important kind of organelles, these are called. These are not quite organs. We call them a little bit differently, we call them organelles, but they're fundamentally like organs. There's a cell membrane around our cells as well. So this is like a protective wall from all the stuff on the outside. So this cell membrane is very, very fancy. It's like, has all this fancy chemistry going on, only lets in particular things, only lets out particular things. It's like the guard of your cell. And then there are these big units in here. Has anyone heard this word before? Who can pronounce it for me? Down the back. Mitochondria, exactly. Very, very cool. So mitochondria is where all the energy production, all this kind of incremental energy that I was talking about, breaking down the hamburger, this is where it's happening on the cellular level. And as I say down the bottom here, just like a car, a cell has many components to keep it running. So let's zoom into the mitochondria now. So we've gone from the whole cell, which I told you was kind of dividing this ruler, 100,000 times, down into a mitochondria, where we have to divide this ruler 1,000,000 times. So we have to divide it by 10, and 10, and 10, and 10, and 6 times. Now we get to the mitochondria. And look at this, look at the shape of this mitochondria. It has all these kind of envelopes in here. And it has all these envelopes because on the actual envelopes are all the kind of cellular machinery that it needs to to create this ATP. So this is where all the machinery lives, on these envelopes. Now we're going to have to zoom in again, and I'll give you a warning, because now things are going to get weird. When we're zooming in this far, we're going to have to talk about individual atoms and atomic processes. So this is where it looks less like biology and a little bit more like physics and chemistry.
Or like nuclear bomb.
Not like nuclear bomb. So we've zoomed in, and what we find is each one of these units looks like this. What the heck is that thing? Let's just wait and just have a look at it, and then we'll talk about it.
It looks somehow like a brain.
It's rotating. Do you see this rotation down here? That is weird. Inside your body, in these cells, there's this little rotating machinery that's creating energy out of our food and the oxygen that we breathe.
Like food.
So these things here, who can guess what they are? It's going to be pretty hard. They're just yellow in this. Yes. They're not proteins. This whole thing is a protein. These are protons. These are individual protons in your body. So at this very small level, your body is dealing with like atomic particles, just protons, hydrogens without electrons, for those people who are very interested. So what's going on here? Should we look at the video one more time?
Yeah.
The protons seem to be coming out from the bottom here, and they're getting shot up. And as they move out, they rotate this machinery down here. And then what this machinery is doing is producing these green molecules, which are the ATP that I just talked about. So we have lots of protons around in your cell, in the mitochondria of your cell. And then there are these units of energy, ATP. And this machine is the thing that's creating these units of ATP. How does it do it? Well, there's this flow of protons. So there's a big reservoir of protons down here. Who knows what a proton is, by the way? Quite a few people. Who can tell me what a proton is? Yes. A proton is a subatomic particle, that's right. So in the nucleus, what's the nucleus of an atom made out of? Yes. Protons and neutrons. So it's one of the particles in the nucleus, essentially. It's one of the things that makes up the nucleus of an atom. And these are things just flowing around in your body. Your body is an amazing piece of machinery. You have a question?
Why does that top of that rotating thing look like a brain?
Yeah, this is just the way that the scientists have visualized this. So essentially, how they visualize this kind of depends upon the electrochemistry of the problem. So it just looks like a brain coincidentally. It looks nice and smooth and ruffled up. But really, these are all made out of these complex atoms, and they kind of have just put kind of a mesh over these complex atoms so it looks kind of smooth and brainy. But this is just a visualization. Okay, so we have these protons flowing from where there's many protons to where there's few protons. Yeah, there's very few protons up here. There's lots of protons down here. So they want to flow up this kind of membrane, up this ATP. And as they flow, they rotate this. Question? Oh, we're going to have to talk about that very shortly. Where does the mitochondria get all the protons for those people in the Zoom audience? And we'll find out that is the key to why we breathe and why we eat food. So as the protons flow up here, they rotate this, and this rotational energy gets converted into chemical energy, which is the ATP. So this is how your body is taking kind of increments of energy and storing them into chemical molecules for later use. So this is why you don't explode. Okay? So it's storing the energy in these ATP. But as our young scientist pointed out, where are these protons actually coming from? How are these protons getting down here? And what that really means is we need some kind of pumping system that takes all of the protons from this region up here and pumps them down into this region. So we have way more protons down here than we do up there. And this takes energy. Pumping protons from up here to down there takes energy. That energy is the energy from our food. That's where our food energy goes. This is where the energy from glucose is going. It's going into these proton pumps. It's extracted little by little, and it's aided by oxygen. So the thing that makes this easy or makes it even possible is that you have all these oxygen atoms kind of down here, which kind of sucking the protons in. So they're sucking the protons in, and this is the oxygen that we breathe. So to get all of the protons down here so that they can be pumped up and they can turn this thing and they can create these little bits of energy that can be stored anywhere in your cell and used for anything, you need this other proton pump, which is powered by our food and our oxygen. And that is it. We eat and breathe to pump protons across the mitochondria in our cells, creating and storing energy in units of this chemical ATP, which gives us the energy for all the processes in our body. That's it.